Hi everybody, thank you for joining me. I am going to present two historical dictionaries of low resource languages that I have been working on. Especially, I am going to sketch out the post-editing practices that I have adopted to develop these two dictionaries, which, as the title of the paper suggests, are close to data journalism workflows. Before I delve into these workflows, a few words are in order to highlight the peculiarities of the two dictionaries and trace the path that brought me to veer towards data journalism editing strategies in the first place. As some of you may recall from my last presentation here at eLex, the dictionaries I've been working on are a diachronic lexicon of Tibetan verbalency and a dictionary and thesaurus of Buddhist Sanskrit aimed especially at translators of Buddhist texts. Both resources are currently available online in a proof of concept form. You can see the links to the online version at the bottom of this slide. As you can imagine, these two dictionaries are very different in scope and aim, but they share some important characteristics. First, both are highly specialized resources aimed at audiences of trained researchers and translators. This means that we do not expect our typical user to turn to our resources just to quickly check the meaning of a word. There are other dictionaries for that. We rather expect them to peruse our resources to find answers to more complicated questions regarding the evolution of Tibetan verb syntax or semantic nuances differentiating Sanskrit near synonyms. It is important to highlight that in many cases, if not most, such questions do not have a straightforward or unique answer. Especially with the Sanskrit dictionary, so much uncertainty surrounds the sources and so much interpretation goes into reading them, that a degree of subjectivity is almost always involved in the lexicographic information we provide. And it is important that our users are not only made aware of this subjectivity, but are also allowed to sidestep our interpretation and use the corpus data we provide to come up with their own interpretation if they want to. Another important characteristic of the two dictionaries is that both have been developed in parallel with the corpus they draw on. This means that we have been manually annotating small corpora with the specific linguistic information that the two dictionaries aim to provide, namely verb argument structure for the Tibetan corpus and highly nuanced semantic information for the Buddhist Sanskrit one. The resulted annotated corpora are, as you can imagine, very small, but contain highly curated information. The final shared characteristic between the two dictionaries is that they both rely on rather short funding cycles of 2-3 years and are produced iteratively along these cycles. Such time constraint meant that we had to choose whether to allocate time and resources to post-editing the information presented in the dictionaries or annotating more corpus material. Since dictionary entries are less repurposable than annotated corpora, we opted for investing in corpus annotation and dispensing with post-editing altogether, at least for the first iteration of both dictionaries. Dispensing with post-editing altogether is less extreme a choice than it might sound. In a sense, our resources have been pre-edited because most of the corpus information presented in the dictionaries has been manually curated beforehand. There are some exceptions, of course. A notable one is the selection of examples. For the Tibetan dictionary, we initially relied on the sketch engine GoodX paradigm to model good examples and sort them in the dictionary display. However, we received requests from our prospective audiences to allow users to specify which parameters to sort the examples by. After all, what constitutes a good example for us may not exemplify what a user may be interested in seeing. This partially offsets to the users the burden of refining the automatic selection of examples and therefore solves this particular post-editing issue. In the current version of the Tibetan dictionary that you can see on the slide, we provide a number of filters and sorting parameters for the user to choose. The default settings include our predefined GoodX sorting without any post-editing, and then the user is free to choose if they want to prioritize examples with translations or with longer sentences or with sentences with multiple arguments and so on. A more general problem that we faced when we decided to dispense with post-editing for the Tibetan dictionary was that it is difficult to create an engaging dictionary entry populated only by automated text and corpus examples. We tried it initially using Lexonomy, and the result was rather dull, as you can see on the slide. Reading through lists of valency patterns is not particularly appealing, and automatically crafting an engaging narrative summary that requires no human revision is not at all easy. Therefore, we decided to drop Lexonomy and the text-based entries and adopt a lexicographic model that I had devised for the Buddhist Sanskrit dictionary, which has the characteristic of delivering most of its content in the form of data visualization. That we saw in the previous slide, but in the new current version of the dictionary. This is a brief introduction to the lemma with some senses and argument patterns, and then we can explore the valency of the verb visually and interactively by looking at how the various arguments are distributed, for example, in the diachronic layers of the corpus. We can see the same information in the form of a bar chart, and we can also explore the various arguments and see examples for a specific word that serves as a specific argument of the verb. We can also look into more details on in the semantics of the verb, looking at near synonyms, for example, and then we can visualize frequency information. We can also search by argument and then search by English meaning. And then we can see, for example, how this meaning of to read is lexicalized in the different diachronic layers in our corpus. So overall, just adding data visualization to this dictionary has made a purely automated entry without any post-editing much more engaging than it was before. Delivering lexicographic content through data visualization has several advantages. Not only data visualizations are easier to ship without any post-editing, they also help us address our users' need for independent exploration of the data by allowing interactive querying of our annotations, and also to some extent allowing for customization of the annotations themselves. In the case of the Buddhist dictionary, for example, we allow users to assign their own period and genre metadata to the sources and then visualize the results. Still, automated data visualizations equally applied to all entries in a dictionary suffer from some important limitations, especially regarding their communicative and explicative power. The efficacy of data visualizations lies in their ability to instantly highlight a pattern or a salient piece of information in the data. However, a chart that may achieve this for a certain word or a linguistic feature may not be as effective when applied to another word or linguistic feature. By simply providing interactive visualization without any post-editing, we leave the user alone to sieve through the different views of the data and to find the one that reveals an insight. This is great in terms of allowing users to reach their own conclusions, but it is a bit too extreme in that it does not provide any guidance at all. And here is where I turned to data journalism post-editing practices for inspiration. In case you're not familiar with the term, data journalism is a branch of journalism that focuses on deriving news stories from datasets and typically conveys much of the information through data visualizations, often interactively. We are probably all familiar with the kind of article illustrated on the slide, where some catchy data visualization charts the progress of COVID, or in this case the spread of vaccination against it, and is accompanied by a narrative elaborating on the data and some interactive widgets to choose which country to view. This article uses data in a very straightforward manner, but in many cases data journalism pieces are more investigative in nature and entail more interpretation than is required just to track vaccinations across the world. And this is what made me look into data journalism when I was searching for inspiration for editing practices for my dictionaries. Data journalism has many important similarities with the kind of historical lexicography that I strive to produce. It is data-driven but often highly interpretive. It encourages users to explore the data and find their own insights. It is heavily based on data visualization. It promotes iterative story development, starting from minimal automated charts and summaries and then augmented them with human-curated content when necessary. It is important to note that this differs from a hybrid model where all stories, or in our case all dictionary entries, are first automatically generated and then post-edited. Rather, some will be only automated without any post-editing, and some will have a completely human-made narrative and post-edited charts. The discriminant is the level of complexity and interpretation required. Typically, the more complex and interpretive the issue at hand, the more human attention is needed. Simple stories that do not require much interpretation can be produced completely automatically by plugging data into template-based text generation software and accompanied by automated charts. Whereas investigative pieces are based on automated leads but are written entirely by human authors. The human authors or their teams also edit automated data visualization to maximize their communicative power and support the story narrative. They manually choose the best chart type for conveying a specific piece of information and the best color scheme to make a specific reading of the data stand out. If the visualization is interactive, the user will also be able to go beyond the reading offered by the journalist and find alternative interpretations, if they so wish. However, this is best done separately, so that it is clear what is the message conveyed by the journalist with all its explicative power as well as subjectivity and bias, and what is the data that the user can play with to reach their own conclusions, which may have a very different set of biases. We are currently trialing a data journalism-inspired post-editing workflow for the second iteration of the Buddhist dictionary. The idea is that the entries for most words will remain purely automated, but words that are especially difficult to translate or present interesting polysemy will be afforded a fully curated entry in the form of what we call a lexical portrait. We only have a single word with a full lexical portrait, and this is the word vitarka. The lexical portrait can be accessed via a button which links to our full analysis in a separate resource, because the dictionary itself for the time being is only dedicated to individual exploration of the data, and we only provide this minimal introductory summary that we have created. The full analysis is in its own separate website, and for this particular word it comprises a summary which is basically the same that is in the dictionary, but in this case also references specific examples which are then shown here on the right side, and it also as an analysis of the frequency of the word, and again is accompanied by a post-edited data visualization of the relative frequency of this head word compared to its near synonym. In this case, the post-editing consisted of trimming the list of near synonyms displayed because to enhance readability, but also to make sure that only the most relevant near synonyms were supplied. Then we have a section on register, which obviously is very important for the purpose of translating. And the register hinges around the type of text in which this word is used. And we use this post-edited graph to display how the frequency of this word compare in so-called technical literatures or philosophical literature vis-a-vis all other genres. Here the post-editing has been in aggregating all other genres in a single bar. The original automated chart that we had in our system was this one, which is, I think, a little bit less intuitive to read. Then we have a context section with the inevitable word cloud. In this case, the word cloud has been post-edited to highlight the two co-text items that correlates more significantly with the two senses of the word. And finally, we have a connotation section, which as the only interactive chart of this lexical portrait, and it is about whether the semantic prosody of the word is negative or positive and when it is, and it also references specific examples so that people can see what we believe is a instantiation of a negative or positive semantic prosody for this particular word. At the end, the user is encouraged to keep exploring this lemma in the dictionary itself. So this is where we are at in adapting data journalism post-editing strategies in our dictionary. We hope we will do much more in the following years, and I thank you all for listening so far. Thank you.